Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Let There Be Talk, episode number 644 today, brought to you by my podcast network, cactusradionetwork.com, where you can find all of my podcasts absolutely free. At Home with Byron Katie, The Grail, Dark Fonzie, and Let There Be Talk. Get them now at cactusradionetwork.com. I want to thank everybody for joining me every week. I cannot thank you enough. I know I say it every week, but I do mean it. It means a lot to me. The show's been rising up in the YouTube and iTunes charts and whatever that means, but it means the show keeps growing, and that's the most important thing. I'm glad to have you guys on board. Incredible guest today. We have a legend, a songwriter, a guitar player, a keyboard player, a producer. This man has done it all. He is a legend, and I don't throw that word around, but my guest today is Dave Stewart of Eurythmics, and man, legend is a perfect title for him. Look at all these songs he has wrote. This guy is a tunesmith. You go back and you dig into Eurythmics catalog, and it is mind-boggling. You know, Sweet Dreams. God, that was a massive song. Here Comes the Rain Again. Would I Lie to You? Missionary Man. I mean, just on and on and on. Hits. Hit after hit they were putting out every year. They hit the scene around 1980 and just exploded with the perfect storm of MTV. Winning Best New Artist in 84, getting a Grammy for Best Rock Performance by a Duo, Brit Awards, UK Music Hall of Fame, and now nominated for an induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I'm sure they will make it in no problem. This man has produced some incredible records. He's worked with Dylan, Tom Petty. I mean, the list goes on and on and on with this guy. And it was great to talk to him. That is a fact, man. It was an honor to talk to him and to have him come by the crib. He came over to the house, which was wild. It's always funny when you see somebody come on in to your house that you don't know, but you've been listening to for years. He looked great, 69 years old, just looking kick-ass, an inspiration for me of always trying to stay in shape. Which, by the way, it is. Yesterday was my 5 years of no sugar. I kicked that diabetes ass, so that feels good. But he came in and he looked great, and he was an amazing spirit. They were doing some jackhammering in my courtyard, and I talked to the guys, and they go, "No, we'll be done." So he came in, and we were about 5 minutes in, and all of a sudden, just gawk, 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 gawk. And I was like, I saw his eyes open, and my eyes opened, like, oh my God. Is this going to fucking not happen because of the jackhammering? It's not like I can say, hey, come back tomorrow or something. The guy doesn't even live in LA. He was here, and I got lucky to have him on. But the jackhammering stopped immediately, thank God, and we had a good time. I want to tell everyone thank you for joining the Patreon, patreon.com/Dean Del Rey. You can join right now and get all kinds of bonus episodes and some Zoom Fest. I've been Zooming every week with the Patreoners. It's been a great time. I want to thank Sean McCarthy, brand new Patreoner, and Kenneth D. Butler Jr., new Patreoners out there. Thank you so much for joining on. Also, I have some new tour dates. Wednesday, I'm going to be shooting my Netflix special. Bill Burr and Friends over at the Palladium. 2 shows, 7 o'clock and 9:45. I cannot even believe it. I've been busting my ass for 3 weeks trying to get this set together. And then Thursday, I will be at the Los Angeles Forum with Bill. And then a bunch of cool arena dates, including the Oakland Coliseum. I'm going back to the Bay Area, my old stomping grounds, and going to hit the stage where I saw Van Halen on the Fair Warning Tour and Women and Children Tour, Maiden. I've seen so many shows in this place, but it's that's going to be wild. And then we're out to Portland and Vancouver and Seattle, and I think some other spots. I can't remember. Some other Canadian spots. Anyway, tour dates, DeanDelRey.com. There's also merch on there. I've got all kinds of cool merch. and everything helps. So pick up a shirt or join the Patreon, and, what can I say? Thank you. All right, let's get into it. Man, this guy was great. He sold over 100 million records, Eurythmics. 100 million records. Back when people bought records. That is insane. Annie Lennox destroying it on the vocals, just killing it. Powerful singer. Great conversation. We talk about how he met Annie. We talk about the Tom Petty Southern Accents record. We talk about some fashion and a lot of other great things. And I hope you dig it. Let's keep the candles lit. Here he is, Dave Stewart. All right, here we are. Another episode of Let There Be Talk. Fantastic guest today. Introduce yourself, my man.
Hello, I'm Dave Stewart from Northern England, and you're listening to the BBC World Service.
Dave Stewart, man. Fucking great to have you on. We have a mutual friend, Armin, over there at Optical Connection.
Yeah, for years, Armin has made me hundreds of different kind of sunglasses in various shapes. You too, I can say.
Yeah. I got an eyewear addiction, so do you.
It's eyes and eyewear and hats.
Eyewear and hats.
Well, I don't need to wear my hat here.
Yeah, that's a great hat. When you think about the era of like the Eurythmics and stuff, fashion was so explosive because for the first time ever, you're really seeing people nonstop on MTV. So you had to kind of have a look and a vibe, you know?
Well, actually, weirdly enough, all the way through the punk sort of movement, even though it was anti-establishment, it was a massive fashion statement as well, because Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren, who had the shop Sex on King's Road, were actually dressing the Sex Pistols, and, Susie and the Banshees and lots of these acts. That was sort of a different kind of fashion statement, like distressed and reflecting the music. So I think it always goes hand in hand with the music, like whether it was Elvis in the gold suit or whether it was like Tom Petty and his sort of more jean dressed down, Rickenbacker 12-string guitar kind of vibe. No matter if you think, he's just being, himself, he's not into fashion or whatever, but you'd be surprised. I haven't met an artist yet who is successful on stage or whatever that wasn't aware to have the certain kind of rip in their jean, and a certain, that famous Kurt Cobain picture with his head down and hair long and the sweater with the holes in them. I mean, it's because you have to sort of project what you're trying to say musically or imagery wise. Even one of my favorite English poets, John Cooper Clarke, he has a sort of certain look, and he goes on stage and he's kind of like, looks like Bob Dylan but like mixed with the Clash or something. And I think it's just creative people, they can't help but like extend it into whatever they're doing,
Well, I think that it's a way of right away letting people know, especially back then, 60s, 70s, 80s, of I don't work a 9 to 5.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, if you look at early interviews when Bob Dylan exploded in England, it's quite funny because there he is with his, hair looking like typical Bob and, Ray-Ban dark sunglasses on, and looks really cool, and then it pulls back to the guys interviewing him, and they've all got suits on and ties and like short back and sides, and he was just like, looked like an alien had landed,
Yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to have a look, and a sound, and when you have both of them combined, then it's explosive,
Well, yeah, and to me, I mean, it's songs, so Annie and I, for instance, as Eurythmics, we would always test it out with just acoustic guitar and a voice, or a piano and a voice, make sure it's a song, and then you can bend it and shape it any way you want to after that. The only exception really to that was on the Sweet Dreams album. I made quite a few of the tracks in my bedroom before we even had an 8-track tape recorder. I just had one synthesizer and a really cheap drum machine, but I did have a space echo, which was, I could make, the drum machine have triplet delays, and I could get a growling bass sound. So on songs like The Walk or I've Got an Angel, it's basically just the bass line and the echo on the drum machine, and then we managed to import it into an 8-track tape recorder when we got it. And those ones, the songs were built on top of these sounds. Same as Sweet Dreams. I had this like mad drum machine that me and our friend Adam slept on the floor of this guy in Bridgewater in southern England while he was still building it.
Oh, wow.
Until he finished it. It was a prototype. You can see it on the Sweet Dreams video with a wooden exterior, and it was like, and so realizing, I knew it was going to do something very different, and he made it so you could tune down tom-toms and things, which you couldn't do on other drum machines. So you could doom, 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 like this. So I thought, right, I'm going to make the lowest tom-tom and tune it down as far as it will go. And that was the whole beginning of doom, 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 doom.
Oh, wow.
Right, and so that immediately, Annie leapt up off the floor. And, so that was inspired really from the sound. But a lot of the other songs where I'd be in the kitchen playing, Would I Lie to You, all that stuff, and playing it on acoustic guitar like an R&B stack song, knowing it was going to go that way. But so we did, like, the last times we played just the two of us with no band, we were playing these, huge concerts with just an acoustic guitar. In Italy we played this outdoor thing, and there was 400,000 people.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, amazing. Then I realized, the Pope had just spoken. So we were like we were on after the Pope. But with an acoustic guitar and voice, and the whole crowd singing along every song. So I think songs followed by performance and, as you say, style, delivery, look. But any of those acts that we mention, whether it was Elvis Presley or Frank Sinatra or the Sex Pistols, without the songs, without,
we wouldn't be talking about them.
No, they would make a hell of a racket, but you wouldn't be going, I am the Antichrist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And funny enough, my wife's father, his best friend, was a guy called Sammy Khan, and I was just busy reading his book. I think he wrote about 50 songs, lyrics for Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
And Sinatra was so obsessed with it being right that he was always really nerve-wracked, because he knew he'd get a phone call at like 3 a.m, and Sinatra was about to go in with an orchestra, live singing. He's going, yeah, but I just can't get my mouth around this one word here. I'd have to do this like this, when he's delivering it. Like he wrote, My Kind of Town, Chicago Is, and all that stuff. And then he'd be up all night, like, stressing out because of the rhyming scan and, like, oh, God, how do I get this one word in? He'd deliver it at the last minute, and Sinatra would read it like, yeah, okay, and then he'd record live, with an orchestra.
Yeah, and the thing about you is, speaking of songwriter, it's just like you're like a tunesmith, man. I mean, there was so many hits, and I mean, just to have one and just have tons of hit songs, it's incredible. When you sit down, do you just write on the acoustic and then just start building it in the studio to become this behemoth? Like, I mean, the sound of them, of course, are massive. The landscaping, everything.
Funny enough, like, for instance, on this new triple vinyl box set album that's coming out, I wrote probably a third of the songs on a ukulele.
Oh, wow.
That end up with like a 60-piece orchestra and everything. Because, you see, I suppose it's the simpler you build the foundation, then the more you can layer and make textures and soundscapes. If you start off something with 27 different chords and, I mean, you're already sort of digging yourself a hole. And so a lot of my favorite songwriters, whether it's a Neil Young or a Joni Mitchell, all the way through to a young band like Inhaler, or or young sort of R&B artists, young. I mean, Ed Sheeran once did it on the TV in Britain. He said, well, you see, most songs in the world, I can turn it into a 3-chord song.
Right.
I can eliminate this chord and that chord, and I can sing you it, like whether it's a Beatles song or whatever, and these 3 chords will fit it, right? So now, when you're as obsessed as probably you are and I am with music, and you studied Italian classical music and, German classical music, and then all the way through to German Kraftwerk, electronic music, right through to, REM, to Nirvana, to, you just go on and on and on. You start to see certain patterns, like, oh, actually, this is very like a Mozart piece here that Paul McCartney's playing, and this is like Mahler, and this is, and you can start dividing some of the classical music up into like almost, death metal chords. Or goth
right.
music, or all the way through. It's just the actual context has changed. That it's like anything creative. You want to put a content into a context. So when we talk about punks, we go, oh right, you can see immediately the look, the sound, the feeling. Well, going all the way back, it was similar to, and going all the way to now, and artists like Harry Styles, or popular artists, you can see the various sort of musical elements he's using and various sort of looks. And he, even though he's, altered and changed many different, it's a world that he's now owning. He's made it his own, but it's made up of different worlds. And just like our songwriting, or anybody's songwriting, is made up of different elements. You might not even know it. You might go back to Aborigine music or an Indian phrase or whatever. I quite like understanding where it did come from, So my discovery, really, I wasn't really interested in music at all. I wanted to be a soccer player.
Oh, wow, really?
For Sunderland, which was my hometown. And when I, had my knee broken and couldn't play, it was when I put on a blues album, thinking, what's this, vinyl record put on my dad's record player, and it just completely blew my mind. That's why in 1991 I went and made the film Deep Blues, paying homage to the Louisiana Delta Blues and Louisiana Blues, mainly Delta Blues, and Mississippi, and it was like going full circle, because it was just when Eurythmics stopped for a while. I went straight there, met R.L. Burnside and Jesse May Hemphill and Booba Barnes and all these, amazing older blues players. A lot of them were like in the late 70s and 80s. And it took me all the way back to the beginning of listening to that record, and something happened, which I think the only term I can use is like a voodoo kind of moment, like a connection with something sorrowful, but like a sense of like hope in it. So when you analyze Sweet Dreams, people sing it in all different ways, and there's choirs and string quartets and children's choirs singing it, but the thing is, it's quite a sort of somber lyric with a very upbeat sound, but it's a blues song really, and I think the roots of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, all those bands,
it's all blues,
because they would go to the dock in Liverpool, and the sailors would arrive back from America, and they'd get records off them, and there was Howlin' Wolf and all these people, and they would they would just learn these blues songs and adapt them to their own world.
It's really interesting to me about how, if you look at Kraftwerk, Gary Newman, Devo, and the Moog synthesizer coming into the whole world and then exploding into the 80s, that era was really heavily synth oriented.
Well, I think everybody, you see, in Britain was very different period to America. So punk was such a massive statement. It was political. It was the annihilation of a certain kind of sound. You see, we'd had American bands come over that had gotten so big and were playing a certain kind of rock music that was turned into a kind of, I don't know, world. I don't want to name names of bands, but it wasn't like rock, like, you know, Motorhead.
Right.
It was like epic kind of. And in Britain, politically, it was so unstable, and there was this rise. There was also a massive rise against racism by the young people. And there were certain politicians like Enoch Powell that were saying, yeah, we want to get these people out of here. And so we had these rock against racism gigs. And it was like, so ska and reggae music went hand in hand with punk music. It
The
was
Clash.
The Clash, and then real sort of reggae bands and Steel Pulse. And it, so when that sort of ended, not so much ended, but like it reached its peak, any band that played guitars before that went, well, fucking hell, it's going to sound ridiculous compared to the sound of Never Mind the Bollocks, right?
Yeah, right.
So what can we do? And so that was why, you know, our electronic album was, you know, it's not like we're making a happy-go-lucky type music, but we were using different tools till middle of the 80s, and you could bring back guitar in a different way, like a Stax R&B way or whatever. But that happens in fashion too, you know. Somebody just comes along and just goes boom, and everybody goes, oh, well, fuck, we can't really do that anymore then, because they've done it in such an epic way. And so a lot of the artists who broke out of that scene, especially from Britain, they had not really learnt much about performance. So when they arrived in America, they only lasted like maybe half a tour or one tour and one gig. Because Annie and I had been in another band where we didn't write any songs, but we toured all over the world and played hundreds of gigs, we'd sort of already learnt about sort of, you know, we could play basically the stage performance, and we were both musicians. And so when we arrived in America, we were like some of the ones that were like, oh, Americans got it. Oh yeah, she sounds great, amazing singer. Oh, they can play.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
it's like
Yeah, you seasoned.
Oh, and we kind of move about and don't stand staring at the floor, you know, like shoegazers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were fortunate in as much as we'd had all that experience, you know.
The videos were just, I mean, those things probably, they had to cost like $1 million to make when you look at these videos.
Oh, no, it was the opposite. Well, I think we probably didn't have more than £5,000, probably less than that, to make Sweet Dreams and Love as a Stranger, and then it crept up, but it was very low. Well, partly because Sweet Dreams was just me and a cinematographer and Annie.
Yeah.
Ridiculously, I wrote out this sort of sketch, you know, like a storyboard, you know, about, you know, Annie and I were in a boardroom and a cow comes in. And it was all based on sort of like, you know, surrealism, Dadaism, like the sort of ridiculousness of boardrooms in the first place. So a cow wanders in, and then we're in a field with a computer full of cows. Yeah, so it wasn't really that. The only difficult thing was to try and get the cow on an elevator down into a basement with the farmer. And the cow, probably very confused about being in this room with these two strange people.
Amazing.
But no, they weren't very expensive. And even in the middle of our, you know, when we'd already made it in inverted commas, you know, like a song like The Miracle of Love, Annie came round this house I was having built in Encino, but it was just a wooden structure. I thought, I'll just film it here with my 8mm cine camera. And so that probably cost about $1,000 or something like that. So, and then there were some ones that were more complex, like Missionary Man needed our friend Willie Smacks, was my friend since we were like in our 21 years old or something. It was all sort of in-camera stuff, so, you know, the wax turning into Annie's head, and it was stop frame, and, you know, like, so there was not that much post-production. It was like changing the camera speed so she looks jerky and not real, and was always experimentation. I think that's the important thing. Like, if you stop experimenting and let other people take over, it can very soon become generic, if you know what I mean.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When you just tap out, you know?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, when the first time that you heard Annie sing, were you just floored? I mean, this voice is huge.
Yeah, I was. First time I heard her sing was the first evening I ever met her, you know. So she was, to get money to stay at college, she was working like a shift, I think probably like 4 till 8 or something, in this health food restaurant serving. And I was steaming up the window like with my breath and writing "I love you" backwards. I had no idea who she was. I didn't even know which one was her. You know, it was just my friend said, "You should meet this girl, she plays a harmonium," right? So I said, okay. So we went there, and then she came out and she said, "What the hell are you doing? I nearly got the sack," you know, like she didn't know who I was. And anyway, we just started talking. Within 10 minutes, it was like we ended up with our friend going to this place, like a bar stroke club, and both of us said, "I don't really like it here." And she said, "Let's go back to where I'm staying," which was about a quarter of the size of this room. All it had was a sink in it, a bed in it, a kettle, and a harmonium. And I said, "Oh, can I hear you play the harmonium? And do you write songs?" She said, "Well, I've been writing a bit." And she sang a bit on the harmonium. And I said, "Fucking hell."
Wow.
I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "You're like amazing artist, you know." She was saying, "Oh yeah, I hate going to college. It's so competitive, studying harpsichord and flute." I said, "What the fuck? Why bother doing that?"
Yeah, right.
And so the next day she never went back to college.
Wow.
And yeah, we sort of lived together from that day. And yeah, from then on, I was just encouraging all the time. Like, "Oh my God, that's so great." Like, you know, I was bringing people around to our squat where we were living and saying, "Listen to this girl, play the harmonium and sing." And that went on for a while. And then it was like, "Well, I better record something." And didn't have any money, so that was a bit tricky. And I had a friend called Pete who also wrote great songs, very different. And we started playing, the three of us together. And but yeah, from the first time I heard her sing and play this squeaky harmonium with the foot pedals, I was like, okay, this is not normal.
Yeah.
You know. And she carried on having that amazing voice, and to this day has, you know, some people can sing, and some people have a sound to their voice that's instantly recognizable and gives you a feeling. And, you know, they're all different, you know, and they're all valid in their own ways and as enjoyable. Bob Dylan, lots of people say, "Oh, I can't listen to him singing." Me and Tyler here, we're always listening to him in the car and everywhere.
Love him.
And then, you know, Neil Young has a particular sound to his voice, but so does Mick Jagger, and so does some people. Just go, "Oh no, I can't stand listening to that." But even you know various artists today, some of them I think, "Oh, it's a really good song and they're really good," but then one will come along and you go, "Oh my God, like they've got that like particular unusual feeling or that unusual sound." I don't know what it is. I think it probably comes from a different place. They're not trying to sing or anything like that. They're just channeling something, and they probably don't even know they're channeling something, you know.
I mean, yeah, it comes down to also, like, you know, a guy like Tom Waits. Some people might not be able to ingest that, but I think it's one of the greatest raw voices out there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's backed by killer songs like, you know, "Hold On" or something, you know?
Yeah. I know my voice, as you can hear, is slowly turning into Tom Waits. But yeah, I know. I mean, there's people. Well, what's weird is that in America has such a different taste to Britain that some things just don't get anywhere. Like, say, Laurie Anderson brings out "Oh Superman." She wasn't even anything to do with pop music or anything. She's a, you know, conceptual performance artist. In America,
I love that song.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it.
But in England, you see, it went straight to number 1.
Wow.
In the pop charts.
Wow.
And in America, nobody had ever heard of her, you know. So I remember working, you know, when she was 18 or 19 on the first Imogen Heap album. And she was one of those people that as soon as she started singing, I was like, wow, this is like so unusual. Her choice of melody and her words and the sound of her voice. And she, to this day, still has, not really been discovered to the size you would think she would be. I had, Sinead O'Connor singing to me from the distance where you are, just in my flat. It brought tears to my eyes. She was just, she was making it up. She went along because she just had a really hard time about something. And there's these people come along, then you go into the world of Prince.
Oh.
And you go, okay, like, hang on, this is just not fair.
Yeah. Just straight alien.
He's singing like that.
Yeah.
He's playing the guitar like that. He's playing the drums like that, the bass like that. He's dancing like that. He's performing like that. And he's got his whole purple thing going on. And you're like, holy shit. There's always been this kind of Stevie Wonder, I sat in a room with Stevie Wonder, messing about on the keyboard, singing, noodling about, making up a song. I had Aretha Franklin sing to me in a tiny room. You could just about get an upright piano in, and she started singing that song, The Way We Were.
Oh,
and she started crying as she was singing it, and it's just me and her in the room, and it's like, God, like goosebumps. And also, I'm constantly aware of I'm from Sunderland in the northeast of England, and here I am in Detroit in this tiny room with Aretha Franklin singing, The Way We Were, and obviously from an emotional place. And so, talking about the sound of people's voices, connecting to an emotional place in the audience, or one-on-one. Annie had that from the second I heard her fingertips hit the keyboard on a harmonium and something came out of her mouth.
It's incredible.
And I remember the first line she ever sang. She said, "Matt, I got your letter on the thin blue paper, the kind that comes from long distances." And I didn't know till later, but it was a friend of hers who went to India, I think, or Morocco, and had sent her a letter, but by the time she'd got it, he'd passed away. He'd got some strange illness there. So, yeah.
Now, was she writing all the lyrics on those records?
Well, the way we divided it up, well, we didn't really divide it up. How we wrote songs was, most of the time, I would start playing something, and then Annie would start singing something, like, I always use the word gobbledygook, but it's like what Mick does, all right? Something. And she'd go, hang on a minute. Then she'd open up a journal, and she would have a whole 2 or 3 pages written. And I was very fortunate because I was probably the only person she would let me look at it. And then I would look at it, and she'd always say, oh, it's not very good. And I said, but look, these 4 lines, or these 2 lines, are amazing. She'd go, let me have a look at that a minute. She'd go back in, and then she'd start singing that, and then her head would explode with ideas, and boom, 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 boom.
Awesome.
But sometimes she would walk in with a whole poem, like sisters are doing it for themselves. She said, I've written a poem. And we'd finished our record, I think, and I was like, well, it is a poem, but it could be a song, And we were in a tiny, the side kind of little room of a studio where they call it the lounge, but it's about the size of a coffin, yeah.
Yeah, you're just in there having a cigarette.
Yeah. I had the guitar, and I just was like, going, start playing chords. And Annie immediately said, no, there was a time, and it became a song. And then it was like, oh my God, hey, we got to put this on a record. And then it was, it's got to be a duet, because it's sisters and all that stuff. And that's how we ended up in Detroit with Aretha.
Oh, God. Let's talk a little bit about you've worked with a lot of artists producing and stuff. One of my favorites, obviously, Tom Petty, the Southern Accents record. That was a weird time for Tom.
Yes.
And how did that come about, you working with him and co-writing,
Well, it was an interesting period, you see, because being from the northeast of England and coming and being in Los Angeles, but not really understanding the world of Los Angeles, it to me was very sort of like through the looking glass, it was like, whoa, this is... And a lot of people, when they first hit America, it's a shock. The TV's a shock, the commercials are a shock, the sandwiches are a shock.
Yeah.
Like everything is like full on, like the cars are a shock. whatever. So I sort of met Tom by default because I was actually writing something. I'd met Stevie Nicks backstage at a Eurythmics show, and she was leaning against my dressing room door, which was tiny in the Wilton, I think it was. And said, "Oh, I'm having a party at my house, and do you want to come?" And we had one gig left in San Francisco. We'd just played across America. I was a bit knackered because I think we'd flown a long way to get to LA, and LA, you can play Seattle, San Francisco, San Diego, but then when you start going east, wherever you go, it's a longer flight, and we're jet lagged, and I wasn't sure. Then she said, "Oh, look, my car's here," and there was a limo, and there was two other girls inside it, and her, and I said, "Okay, I'll go to a party." And I got to her place, but there was no party. It was just a big Gothic type of house, and they all went in the bathroom.
Oh yeah.
So
one of those parties.
And never came out.
Yeah.
Anyway, to cut a long story short, because this story, it's in my book, and Stevie talked about it and corrected my book as well. Basically, we ended up spending the night together, but I was asleep. She'd been up for ages. But in the morning, I had to get out of the house, and also, you see, at that time, no cell phones, no way of contacting the band, didn't bring my tour itinerary, didn't know the hotel, couldn't ring the management company, which was in New York, till the morning, and then had to go to an airport and get on a plane. Everybody was pissed off with me because my luggage and all that stuff. And I wrote in the hotel room in San Francisco. I just bought a Coral sitar guitar, and I had a 4-track Tascam Porter Studio.
Oh yeah, little cassette tape.
Yeah, and I had a drum machine and a delay little thing through a foot pedal, and I played that whole thing, and I sang "Don't Come Around Here No More" and did "Dare Dare Dare" and made this song. So I went back to play it to Stevie, and Jimmy Iron said, "Oh, this is great. Hey Stevie, this could be huge, right? You should sing this." But I didn't realize that she would broken up with Jimmy, and he was still trying to produce a record, but it was awkward. And so she kept repeating Shakespearean lyrics on the verse, and Jimmy was going, "Oh, And then he said, "Okay, I'm going to ring my friend up and come down." That was Tom Petty. And he came, and Tom heard it. It was quite interesting because he said, "I'm having this for my record because the last time it was Stop Dragging My Heart Around, Jimmy, and you did this, and it was on Stevie's record, and she had a huge hit, and my record, suffered for it." So Tom said, "Hey, come on, we'll drive to my garage, where I have a studio." And we carried on making it there. And of course, I had no idea he was making an album called Southern Accents. This is as far as you could get. This was more like Delhi or like Calcutta, what I was doing.
Right.
So the band was scratching their head like, "What? Southern Accents?" And this is like, now we've gone to Bombay or Mumbai. But anyway, I got to know the band a bit and hang out with them, and they realized when we recorded it was very unusual, and I sort of got a string quartet and my usual English sort of production, I don't know what you would call it. And then anybody who heard it was like, "Oh God, that's definitely going to be a hit in some way or other." And I said, "You know what, you should make a video and like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, because that's what everything was like to me, it was like just bonkers." And so this great director came in, created that weird set, that optical illusions, and
that's great.
And then Tom had the giant top hat. And from then on, it came a part of his show and the whole thing with the hat. And I knew the band were like, "Well, what are we meant to play?" Because it's a drum machine and a sitar guitar. So I said, "Hey, what about at the end, it doubles up?" And suddenly I got this girl to do this really high, screaming note, and it goes into full-on, like, rock. Mike Campbell playing that great wah-wah guitar solo. And then they were like, "Oh, yeah, all right, okay, this is all right."
Yeah. We're in on it now, and we can rock out.
Well, then it became a big part of the show.
It was great. It's a great outro.
Yeah, that live part with the strobes going off and it, Mike solo. And yeah, that was a whole journey. But I became great friends with Tom for years. In fact, I built my house in like 2 roads or 2 streets away from his, just because he was the only person I kind of knew in LA that I got on with, and we had the same dry sense of humor, and we would do all sorts of mad things for a joke. And I think, in a way, I kind of cheered him up because he was in a very...
Oh, yeah, it was dark time. Battle with the label.
Everything going wrong at the same time. And, so I think, in a way, I sort of helped, without realizing I was doing it, helped pull him out of it a bit. But I didn't understand LA, obviously, from where I'm from, so I started living at Jimmy Iovine's house. We started sharing this place, and on Mulholland. Now, down the road was Don Henley.
Oh, my God.
And, he would come around the house, and Bruce Springsteen would come around, all these people.
Oh, my God.
So I got to know all these people, but I thought, one day Jimmy was out, and I thought, oh, Don Henley was down the road, I'll go and chat to him. I'd met him at the house. So he had this big gate, so I just climbed over it. Right, which you would do in England or Sunderland.
Right.
So I climbed over this gate, and then I sort of wandered down and sort of looked through the windows of the kitchen. I think him and his girlfriend were making some toast or something, and I sort of knocked on the window, and then they jumped out of their skin. And he was like, how the hell did you get in here? So I climbed over the gate.
Yeah.
He goes, oh man, it's like he was in total shock. I was like, he said, no, that's a dangerous thing to do around here, like, not from him, but I mean...
Right.
And I went, oh, sorry about that. But then Tom realised often I would just climb over his gate because he would wake up really late. So I would climb over the gate and go in, and Adria, who I'm still friends with today, his daughter, she'd be having some cereal, cornflakes, and I'm like, can I have some of that? And I'd be like eating cereal and like waiting for Tom to get up. And it was very hard to sort of understand that whole gated world, like,
Yeah. Well, you get to that giant star level. I mean, look at you. You sold 100 million records, That is astronomical. It's a crazy amount. And a lot of people, they get thrown into that rock star world of LA where everywhere you go, people recognize you.
Well, I ended up with a big gate, actually.
Yeah.
Like when I built my house. But the gate was always like jammed up. And then that's, I became friends with George Harrison and Bob Dylan and all of them. Then they would all meet at my house, and then it became the Wilburys in my back garden. That's a weird sight to look out your window and there's a tree and 5 guys sitting around it with acoustic guitars like Roy Orbison.
Oh, God.
So, yeah,
the Wilburys, I mean, come on.
No, I think, I also created a studio in Britain called The Church, which is, I think when you have an open personality and you're into music and you have a studio, and you know what happens around studios, musicians like being around other musicians and jamming, and I just was always open to that. I loved learning everything about American music, even now. Made about 10 albums in Nashville, and like sort of done duets with Alison Krauss and like all this stuff, and like from electronic music to like duets with country artists, and just because I'm like fascinated by the whole world of it. So I should lead it into like...
Yeah, let's get into...
That's how my triple vinyl album...
Yeah, you got the Ebony McQueen.
Yeah, so basically it's a box set with 3 vinyl albums, 24 songs, and then 2 EPs that are vinyl and 2 cassettes and various other things. But the whole journey is the journey we've been talking about. It's like me up in the northeast in England... in a very sort of depressed time. They'd closed, the shipyards, the coal mines. There was some ridiculous, like 70% unemployment. And me thinking, what am I going to do here apart from play soccer as best as I could, try and play for the team. And when my knee was broken, I started to play blues, as I mentioned earlier. So in the movie, Ebony McQueen is a fictitious character replacing, the Robert Johnson album I put on.
Wow.
And so she appears in the movie in living form in my bedroom when I'm down in the kitchen, and I go into my bedroom and she's just sitting on the bed with a guitar. And it's like, what? Like, heart attack. And she becomes my sort of portal, my Excalibur or whatever, into this whole world of music. And then she also reminds me that the girl next door's got the blues too, even though she's an Indian girl and it's a little Indian shop that sells everything. And, it's like your whole sort of lens opens up and you start to realize, I hadn't even bothered to realize that the Beatles were on the radio. I was so into soccer, right? So now when the radio came on, I was like, oh my God. The Kinks, the Who, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, was all happening. I was at that age. I was 16 in 1968, so it was like bonkers.
Wow.
I started learning the guitar when I was like 13 and a half. So as I was learning it, all these bands were becoming more and more sort of epic songwriters and...
Yeah, and guitar bands. That was like the ground zero of the guitars,
Exactly, and there I am, 19, and it's 1971, and it's Hunky Dory and Lou Reed Transformer and Neil Young's Harvest. And I was like bombarded. So my triple album goes through all of these. I didn't try to stick to this genre. I just went, these are all my influences that blew my mind.
It's amazing. It goes all over. I absolutely, I listened to the whole thing twice.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, and I really liked, when it gets into People Change.
Yeah.
Just a crushing song. And then this one, Unhappy Town, that could easily be like an old Bowie tune, you know?
I know what you mean, yeah.
The flavors of this thing, it takes you through, you got some ragtime feel in there.
Yeah, that was when I discovered Mississippi John Hurt. That's my cousin sent from Memphis, this album, and there's this guy sitting on the front, and he's going, I'm satisfied, tickled to old, and it's finger picking, and I noticed, syncopated bass line, and so I learnt that. So I wrote
it's beautiful
Walking
stuff.
on Thin Air, yeah. So
it comes out May 20th. I think the single's May 13th.
That's right, yeah.
And, it's just, what I love about you? I don't know how old you are, but you've been playing music all your life.
69.
60?
69? Yeah.
And I was going to say 60. Wait, I'm 56. But you've been playing music all your life, and the songwriting is still there. As I listened through this, I was like, these are incredible songs. And they're not like... There's acts that get up there and they just kind of put out generic songs, and you're like, well, they're not even trying anymore, especially in the lyrics.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But this thing was really, really amazing. And to do a 3-record set, I
know, Madman, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, everybody's bringing out box sets, but usually it's repackaged albums.
Old stuff.
This is all brand new stuff written during the pandemic. And the title track, Ebony McQueen, this is influenced by when I was 5, and I didn't realize this till I was 30. My dad had made a record player in his shed. We lived in a little house, and he had a little workman's shed. And he bought every Rodgers and Hammerstein vinyl album from musicals, And I didn't realize till I was about 30 how much those arrangements had stuck in my head. So Ebony McQueen, the opening track, in the movie, my person who's playing my father is playing this kind of orchestral brass type of music, And so I put all that in with the whole 60-piece orchestra and the marching brass band and the whole thing. And it kind of sounds a bit Beatlesy,
right?
Which is what was happening on the radio, but it's mixed with my dad's, playing all the way through the house, these massive arrangements, and then it, as you say, it goes from that opening all the way down to tiny finger picking, Walking on Thin Air, which is like a Mississippi John Hurt, me discovering finger picking blues. And I really, obviously, I'm not trying to have like a hit record or a hit album.
Yeah, you got plenty of those.
No, I'm just putting on the thing everything I love, and then hopefully some other people might connect with it, especially if they've been through the same eras of music as I have. Right.
You think you'll play any of it live, toured or anything?
Well, I think after the film, it's going to probably be a stage musical. Have you ever seen Billy Elliot?
Seen what?
Billy Elliot, the movie.
No.
It'll probably end up on a stage musical with other people performing it.
Right.
and about, you know, a kid discovering a blues woman in his bedroom, and in the north of England, and like, what the hell's going on? And so those scripts have already been written between myself and a guy called Lorne Campbell and Selma Dimitrovic, who are both playwrights. And so I'm excited for the whole journey. It's going to be, obviously, you know, making that triple album and having the box set made during lockdown is one thing, and then making a movie and a stage musical is another thing.
That's incredible, man. So much work, man.
So much work, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think Eurythmics will ever play again?
Well, we will be playing on June the 16th as we get inducted in the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow.
But just a little bit we play. And then we don't know yet, but we might be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in October or November, and obviously we'll play then.
Wow.
And people are asking us to play all the time, you know, promoters and whatever.
Yeah.
But touring, you know, the whole touring thing.
Right now,
I mean, I would obviously, you know, I love playing live and would love to do it for Annie. It's a Herculean thing to sing all those songs and tour, and some of those songs are very hard to sing, you know. Some people have got, I like singing that song, and they go, oops.
Oh my God! I mean, they're so powerful and high and radical,
and tricky. Yeah.
Yeah. It was an honor to have you on, and
so
you look fantastic, and your music has just been mind blowing forever. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you out on stage somewhere.
Yeah, so do I.
And when you come back in town, let's get some lunch or something.
Absolutely.
And hang out with Armin.
Yeah, hang out with Armin. Okay, that sounds like the title of our new album. All right.
Thank you so much for doing the show, brother.
Cheers.